everyone. It's Naomi Wolf of DailyClout, and I'm so excited to be here with Jeff Hayes, who is the incredible producer who has just made and distributed the earth-shatteringly important film of RFK Jr.'s equally important, The Real Anthony Fauci, the book, which is a blockbuster, which led to Mr. Kennedy being targeted for censure, erasure, and so on, but which nonetheless has sold hundreds of thousands of copies, if not more than that, for Skyhorse Publishing. And so this movie is going to be at least as important because it's bringing that absolutely undeniable, unforgettable, thoroughly researched argument that everything we've lived through for the last 2.5 years is based on decades of lies, and especially exposing the originator of the lies, Anthony Fauci. Mr. Hayes has created a stellar cultural product in this movie. This is not the first time he's created riveting and highly acclaimed documentary films. He was shortlisted for an Academy Award for his documentary In Native Soil. He's made lots of other documentaries, including Doctor and Quack and Bot, and he just premiered a fiction, in other words, a film that is not a documentary, at the Toronto Film Festival titled What Goes Around. So we're delighted to welcome you.
Great to be with you, Naomi.
So of course I make a brief appearance, which I'm honored to do in the film, but I'm just disclosing that, in terms of anyone about to jump on a conflict of interest. But please, let's go right to the film. This took so much courage for you to make. And I know that I've been told by a colleague of mine that you said in an interview that it doesn't matter, you're going to face blowback and opposition, maybe more. What led you to be so brave as to make a film out of a book that has already been targeted?
Yeah, and by the way, continuing on the book has sold 1 million copies,
Oh, wow.
17 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and still to this day, there's not been one major media review of the book. It's the most suppressed book of my lifetime. And yet, it's getting out there, 1 million copies. And, like nonfiction books, 20,000 to 30,000 copies is a bestseller. To sell 1 million copies is astounding. But, there was a paper shortage when the book came out. I love Tony Lyons is such a scrappy publisher. He got paper anywhere he could find it. When Simon and Schuster and HarperCollins were, not publishing for a period because of the paper shortage, he would find paper. So the book sometimes would be 450 pages. My copy was 600 pages,
Wow.
regardless of, just because of the variance in paper. But regardless, it was a daunting read, 2,100 citations, over 2,100 citations. And I read the book and thought, wow, this is so compelling, so important. If we can make this in a more digestible format, then more people could be exposed to it. Then, this gives me, I jokingly say this is my career-ending film, but it's not like I'm Steven Spielberg. The world is not going to mourn the loss of a filmmaker, but I love my job and I love what I get to do. And so it really caused me to pause and think, did I really want to do this? The reality is I'm the only person in the world that I know of that could make this film. And not because I'm the best filmmaker in the world. There's lots better filmmakers, but I have the ability to make a film like this. But more importantly, I have the ability to distribute it.
Right.
And that's the key. Somebody says, well, will this be at a film festival? Will this be, no, this will not be at any film festival anywhere. I can't put it on Amazon. They won't let me sell a DVD. They won't let me sell a thumb drive.
Wow.
We did 5 appeals to just try to sell it on a digital thumb drive. They won't accept it. And so I have my own distribution platform. We've made it available for people to see for free for 7 more days. And we can get this film out. And that, in this case, is the most important part.
I cannot believe we're having this discussion in the United States of America. What reason did Amazon, I gather, give you for refusing to distribute your
And
film.
they don't give a reason. It's like, it's funny. I love, most of the books that Bobby sold were on Amazon. I think it's a little more intimidating them to burn books than it is to, not accept a film, since they are in the film business. But this is just, I can't buy ads on Facebook. I did a series called Christ Revealed. Talk about a it's a religious series.
Right.
Facebook won't let me buy ads for Christ Revealed because my name is barred at Facebook. So we used to spend $100,000 a month on Facebook, and they're no, thank you. Can't buy ads on Google. Excuse me. This is the shutdown is so complete.
Well, as I know, because I said it, Google's invested in the vaccines, and Facebook is invested in the vaccines. So it's not it's incredibly disappointing that they would censor speech like yours, but the profit motive is clear. In addition to the fact that, as people may or may not know, they're being sued right now. We're suing Twitter, and Facebook is also being sued by 2 state attorneys general for colluding with the White House in suppressing conversations like these. So in spite of that, you made the decision to make this movie. What would you say? So I always think about my mom, Deborah Wolf, and she gives me permission to say this when I interview people. When I assess the impact of a cultural product like yours, because she is squarely NPR listening, CNN watching, lovely Jewish lady of a certain age, urban, all the things. And this movie would hit the Deborah Wolf, impact measurement, in the sense that she would understand it, watch it, and be swayed by it. What led you to? I guess I should say, what do you think is the most important message that people like my mom are going to, not insiders, not followers of Bobby Kennedy already, but mainstream Americans who may not have seen any alternative media about these issues? What do you think is the most important takeaway for a viewer like that?
Well, this was interesting. I was one of the people that was really ignorant about Anthony Fauci when I read Bobby's book. To me, this was a guy who showed up at Trump's side, who was avuncular, grandfatherly, likable. Like literally, when he talks, I'm like, okay, I like this guy, and I didn't know anything about him. Then I thought, his comments on mask initially, like, I know the size of a virus, and I know the size of the breathing through a mask. It made sense, and then he reversed himself on that, and I thought, well, that's odd. And then said, well, yeah, I actually didn't tell the truth about that because we were trying to protect. And I'm like, well, that's another odd way to handle that. And then I read Bobby's book and read this man's history and saw the power base that he had created. It was funny. I just had filmed a TV series that Jeffrey Katzenberg bought called The Fix. It was Johann Hari's book that I licensed, Chasing the Scream. And in there's the story of a guy, Harry Anslinger, who started the war on drugs in the 1920s. It wasn't Reagan, it wasn't Nixon, it was Harry Anslinger in the 1920s. And he was a little bureaucrat who inherited a department called the Bureau of Narcotics. Prohibition, had ended. He didn't have any funding, and he released to the press that cocaine and heroin and marijuana were causing black men to crave white women. That and this was in the New York Times.
Wow.
He created this crisis and created the drug policy, built that into a massive department with large funding, and ran it for longer than J. Edgar Hoover ran the FBI. He was there 50 years. And I suddenly read about Anthony Fauci, and it is an echo of the same bureaucratic overreach where one person, here you have Tony Fauci has overseen the distribution of almost $1 trillion in his career, $930 billion. can you imagine the people that are beholden to him, that are scared to speak out against him?
Right.
And he has wielded that sword, ruined careers. The this was a shocking story to me, and people need to know what happens when we concentrate that kind of power in one bureaucrat, and then when he partners with Bill Gates and they forge their alliance, and now you have big pharma and all the money, the billions that have been made off of this, a corruptible bureaucrat. You've got a recipe for the disaster that's happened over his 40-year career.
A fascinating answer, Jeff. And I guess what I was most struck by, both in the book and you brought it to life so powerfully with the historical footage, which I have no idea where you got. Well, two things. One is the experimentation on throwaway kids by the pharmaceutical industry and the government. It was so shocking because it was like the government wasn't yet ashamed of it, right? Like the fact that they would have footage at all is such a revelation. And the other thing that was extraordinary to me as someone who, came of age during the AIDS crisis, believed what I was told by Anthony Fauci, and remember that kind of trial run for what we're seeing now. It seems obvious of, it could be spread through the air. It could be spread by toilet seats. Don't touch anyone. Don't go near anyone. And that intense, like that ad you show of a woman dancing with a number of partners and the message, don't dance with death, and the kind of very judgmental toward gay men and women, as I recall that those messages were, those really impacted people. And then they turned out to be not true in the way that Dr. Fauci at that time was saying they were true. And your revelations about AZT and Celia Farber's revelations and RFK Jr.'s revelations about AZT possibly being the agent that killed people as opposed to AIDS, that was stunning, and yet I haven't found any rebuttal of that, right? When I first heard this theory from Celia Farber's work, I thought, that can't be right. But then when I read further in the Real Anthony Fauci, it seemed thoroughly documented. And if that's actually correct, it calls into question the whole history of the fight against AIDS. Will you speak to both of those, taking each in turn, the uncovering of the experiments on children and the revelations your movie makes about Dr. Fauci's role in perverting the fight against AIDS, essentially?
Yeah, this was, and what's interesting in the AIDS example, where he would only champion this AZT, which at the time was the most expensive drug that was released, hugely expensive. It was the most deadly chemotherapy that had ever been introduced to mankind. Meanwhile, we had off-label drugs that doctors were using successfully and reporting to his department, hey, this is working. And if you remember the movie Dallas Buyers Club with Matthew McConaughey, where these guys were having to smuggle these drugs in from Mexico that were keeping them alive, that were inexpensive, that were having good results. And he wanted nothing to do with it, wouldn't do any studies on them, said, we can't use those because there's no studies. What's approved is AZT. And so this exact same thing, he repeated that in COVID when they wanted nothing to do with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, even though we have all of these doctors that are actually treating patients, unlike Fauci, he doesn't treat patients. These guys on the front lines are getting terrific results, life-saving results. He wanted nothing to do with it. And instead, we were sending, for the first time ever, people were going to the hospital, doctors sending them home, say, if you get sicker, come back. The only drug that he would approve was remdesivir, which was such a deadly drug that nurses started calling it "run, death is near." And this habit of his, and all of this focused on getting a vaccine. The thing that was most interesting to me in the film and in the book, and if I hadn't read all of Bobby's book, if I'd have just read the part about the tabletop gaming, the war games that they play with, I would not have believed it. And we open with Event 201, where they actually 6 weeks before the coronavirus it was ever announced, the COVID-19 virus was ever announced, they tabletop gamed a coronavirus outbreak, had news stories, they had, and then they around the table, you have public health experts, you have public policy experts, you have people from the press, and also strangely, you have someone from the CIA that is at all of these tabletop games that they mock this up. And they laid out their strategy for shutting down any anti-vaccine talk. How are they going to get around that? How are they going to convince people to get it? And you watch this, and then 6 weeks later, they put this playbook into action.
Stunning. And, I've read the presentation of Event 201, the kind of slide deck, but I'd never seen the footage. How did you get the footage of Event 201? That must be highly difficult footage to get access to.
It's funny. This is out there and available for people. There's not even an attempt to hide what's been done. When you step back and look at it, go, questions I'm getting on a lot of these interviews is, why is Tony Fauci do this? Why is in I let the viewer decide. Bobby in his book is meticulous about not mind reading, about not saying he did it because of this. But if you just look at the facts, you can draw your own conclusion.
Well, I can't, honestly. I mean, I know you don't want to speculate, but the only conclusion I can reach looking at everything now is that either there's, our government has been co-opted by the World Economic Forum and these bad nonprofits, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and or there's a consensus at a meta-national level to reduce the population.
Yeah, these are shocking. When you consider this level, I just keep reminding myself, okay, the results of incompetence and malice are the same regardless of what got us there. This is a time for us when we lost so many rights, and half of the population of this country seemed to be cheering it on, where we lost the right to gather. We have 3.3 million businesses that were shut down by the government without compensation. I'm a small businessman. This is wreckage. When we lose our businesses, we don't just lose a business. It's not that we look down and see a dry cleaner store is closed. Behind that is somebody who may be losing their house. They may be losing their ability to send their kids to college.
Totally. And all the vendors that, the whole supply chain, it's a ripple effect. You're absolutely right. Just to jump in again, can you go back to the kids? Because another shocking thing is that Dr. Fauci's wife is in charge of, ethics of basically experiments, and the Real Anthony Fauci pointed out that, which you don't really go into that much from what I saw in the movie, but it really made an impact on me, that Dr. Fauci owns AIDS vaccine patents. So if I'm getting this correctly. So can you go back to the experimenting on the kids?
The part that was shocking to me is what we're doing to Africa. And it's interesting. If you remember when this virus first hit and we're planning on a vaccine, there was all this talk about, we've got to make this vaccine inexpensive because we need millions of doses for Africa. We've got to take care of Africa. And of course, they fell short, and it was so lucky for them, because you compare the countries in Africa that did not vaccinate, their outcomes are 10 to 100 times better than the countries that vaccinated. I mean, and just countries right next door, and these countries that Tanzania saying, we're not doing COVID. I mean, we're not going to have it. It doesn't exist here by presidential decree. Wow. But they sailed through this without the deaths that the countries that vaccinated had. We have been abusing Africa. This is where we test our vaccines, and we test them on children. We test them on pregnant women. We test them on babies. We test them if kids won't take their drugs. We have them on feeding tubes, and we have been
to this day. It's not just the archival footage you showed
Oh yeah, to this day.
this day.
This where when the WHO goes in, and if an African country is needing aid, in the same way that Harry Anslinger exported our drug policy all over the world, Fauci has exported our health policy all over the world. And if they want our help and they want to participate, then they have to participate in our vaccine program, and that includes all of this testing.
Oh my God. So basically, we're holding the bodies of African citizens hostage. If they want food, if they want infrastructure, they have to submit their populations to pharmaceutical experimentation. That's the bottom
Yeah,
line.
as Bobby points out, the problem of poverty is a complex issue, and we go into African countries and where they need sanitation and clean water would be the most impactful thing we can do. We don't give them sanitation and clean water, we give them vaccines. And this is it is a very complex problem. I'm a capitalist. I love the free enterprise and the fact that I can start a business and build it and have something where there was nothing. And then I look at this capitalism. I refuse. This is something else. I refuse to call it capitalism when we have profiteers and the greediest corporations on this earth suddenly colluding with corruptible politicians and bureaucrats. It is This is not capitalism. This is something else, and it's the ugliest form I've ever seen.
Well, your movie categorically explains how pharmaceutical companies are now kind of more powerful than nation states and more powerful than politicians, and really kind of set the agenda, and strip us away of our rights. So let's go now to, you've been so generous with your time, let's go to what's ahead for this film. You've spoken about being shut down by Amazon. Have you or Mr. Kennedy had any blowback additionally from the film? And do you think the fate of the film and Mr. Kennedy's message will change if the midterms put Republicans in power?
Yeah, I think these midterms, if Rand Paul gets subpoena power, this is going to be a whole different ballgame. When I started filming on this in January of this year, I was filled with trepidation. And the problem is they have a reality problem. It's and that they don't acknowledge it. I mean, where yesterday they voted to add the mRNA vaccine to the childhood vaccination schedule, and the reasons behind that are diabolical. But the committee voted for it 15-0.
Wow.
Last week, Bobby said this will pass 15-0 because they wouldn't be sitting on that committee
Right.
if they weren't going to vote yes and rubber stamp this. You talk about experimenting on children in Africa. This mRNA vaccine, what are the 5-year results of it? What are the long-term, like this is still an experiment, and even, legally, they just, it's still experimental use, and they are just introducing this not in Africa to test on children, to make it where this test will continue on our children here. And there are states that will adopt the CDC schedule and make it mandatory for kids to go to school. The test continues.
Yeah. God, so shocking. Um, what can people do to help you and to get the word out about this?
Man, we need lots of help. The film is up for 7 more days for free. Hopefully, we'll do another free screening like this in a few months. But I want anybody who wants to see it to see it. If I post on Facebook, a poem, a picture of my wife, I'll get, I've got 5,000 friends and 5,000 followers on my personal Facebook page. I'll get 300 or 400 likes, shares on, a picture of my wife, and if I post about this film, I'll have 3 people. So the shadow ban is there. We need people to share this. and share via email, share via Twitter, which I think is now behaving a little better, in any social media they can. The only way this film is going to get out and make an impact is if people are aware of it. If 1 million people will buy Bobby's book, there has to be 10 million people that would be willing to see a free documentary if they get to hear about it. And I'm asking people to join with us and spread it, because that I just can't move the needle alone.
Absolutely. Are you having a good response so far, or is it still all hands on deck to get the word out?
It is all hands on deck. We've had, hundreds of thousands of people have signed up to see the film. We have people sign up, and we may have to move, like, so we can send them, here's your new link, here's your new link. As our site is being blacklisted by 8 different ISPs. And again, Naomi, that happened before the film came out. It would be one thing if somebody watched it and said, well, I think this is incorrect and I don't want our people to see it. But they blacklisted the site before we even released the film. And so we're going to have to play a little cat and mouse to keep it out there, but it's worth it.
Well, you're such a generous spirit. You're not saying this, so I'll say this for you. Even after these 7 days are over, and absolutely everyone share this with everyone you possibly can, it's up to you, but even after these 7 days are over, there are ways to buy the movie and other products associated with the movie. And I just want to ask people to do that, because a filmmaker like you needs to be supported, and to be able to keep your doors open. And I also think you should be supported as a result of the tremendous courage you've shown, and your gifts as well, but just the courage you've shown in being willing to save your fellow human beings and save history and get the word out and do justice to Mr. Kennedy's incredible book. Is there any last thought you want to?
Yeah, and just on that comment, people are so great. It's like my business, we run on a paradox. The more we give away, the more money we make. Already, we've had hundreds of thousands of dollars of people who watched it for free and decided they wanted to own it and buy it. And so I'm fairly certain I'll get my money back on making this film, just by saying, watch it for free. Anybody who wants to and finds value in it can own it. And we really don't even have to worry about it. What I have to worry about is making sure that people like your mother, you're going to hear about it. Last night, Bobby texted me that Senator Ron Johnson texted him. He sent the link to 35 Republican senators last night. Newt Gingrich tweeted about it twice this weekend. If we could get this film to cross the aisle, then we've done something.
Absolutely. Well, I'm personally going to send it to all the AIDS activists I know, because I think the LGBTQ community was horribly abused by Dr. Fauci and his lies. I mean, horribly genocidally abused, and they should be mad and they should be aware. And I'll send it to everyone I know. And so, Mr. Hayes, thank you so much. Jeff, thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for this incredible movie. Everyone rush out to the website, which is
the Real Anthony Fauci movie.com. And Naomi, you were terrific in it. Somebody watched it and just yesterday and said, man, there was one woman who was really great in this. And he goes, I can't remember her name. And I said, was it Celia? And he goes, no, but she was good. Was it Naomi? Oh man. So you're getting comments from people. Your impact on the film was tremendous. And thank you.
I was honored to be included. Thank you so much. And everyone rush out and support this brave filmmaker and watch this amazing film, The Real Anthony Fauci. Take care.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of DailyClout, and I am asking you to please, if you like the video you just saw, support us, become a member, donate. You can send checks to P.O. Box 24, Millerton, New York, 12546, or go to DailyClout, DailyClout, become a member or donate. Thank you so much for your support. Every penny goes for paying our hardworking staff, paying hosting costs and paying our lawyers who have been leading the fight to keep you safe and free, to keep the Constitution safe and to keep you free. Thank you so much.